Welcome everybody. As you're streaming in, it's 11:59. I did not put anything in the chat. Nicole and Nicole's with me today. Woohoo! She's co-hosting. Nicole, you and I should be out on a float somewhere with mics, like NBC or CBS, talking.
Yeah, with some beautiful flower arrangements all around us.
I know, right? And we're freezing, but we can't look like we're freezing. That's my favorite, is to watch the news commentators. But anyway, we're playing this one slightly more fast and loose. I have Nicole here with me today. And actually, Nicole, I think I have to make you a co-host if I have not yet, just in case something goes awry, which might actually be happening. And then
sure. It says I'm a panelist.
You are a panelist. Yes, you are on the streets of New York. Well, Robin, thank you for joining us. We are going to see lots of Robin's handiwork. I'm actually going to make you the host, Nicole, in case I get booted off, which has happened once, scarily. Elliot, welcome from Washington. Yes, it's good to see Nicole too, and have Nicole here. Nicole and I chat via Slack every morning, but I don't ever see her. All right, we're at noon. We're at noon 01, so let's get started. Welcome everybody to our virtual Thanksgiving Day parade talk and celebration. This was an idea that I'd kind of come up with, not only because I love the Thanksgiving Day parade myself, but also just because I like the history behind it. I also like the history behind Thanksgiving because it's one of those things we don't talk about very much. And we're just going to go for it. We're going to do the history of the other important thing to realize is we are doing the history of the balloons. We're not going to talk about floats, and we are not going to talk about the acts or the bands or all that. We're going to focus on the balloons and the history of the parade. So it's going to be balloon centric, the classes of the balloons and all that great stuff. All right, so here we go. And of course, our opening slide is Snoopy. This was the first Snoopy balloon in 1968. It was Flying Ace Snoopy. We'll talk more about Snoopy much later on in the presentation. But first, before the parade, let's talk just briefly about Thanksgiving. So the first Thanksgiving is actually up for a lot of debate. A lot of people settle on an event that happened in 1621 in Plymouth. That's what we learn in school. That's when we dress up like pilgrims and Indians, or we've seen our children dress up like pilgrims and Indians to celebrate an event that most likely could have happened as early as 1619, may have actually happened in Virginia, not even Massachusetts, when the first set of Puritans landed in Virginia and gave Thanksgiving. The reason why is Puritans actually celebrated periods of fasting and Thanksgiving all throughout the year. It was part of their religious observances. So Thanksgiving was something that happened quite often throughout the calendar year for the Puritans. But the Thanksgiving that we sort of hone in on as our American Thanksgiving was because of, after a particularly rough winter in 1620, when whom we call the Pilgrims arrived, incorrectly by the way, at Plymouth. They were trying to get to Virginia. They were helped by the Wampanoag tribe. And the Wampanoag tribe helped them to plant food and to keep themselves basically fed and warm throughout a very rough winter. And a lot of them did not make it. So there was an event that most likely happened at some point, either between late September to very early November, to celebrate that very first harvest. What was on the menu? Most likely venison, shellfish, fish, and vegetables, squash and corn and beans. Turkey was most likely a much later addition, as Benjamin Franklin tried to make the national bird, the turkey, for its intelligence. And there was a wild turkey in Massachusetts, but not sure that they ate it. Now, the Thanksgiving that we know and love is started as a holiday by Abraham Lincoln, and Abraham Lincoln is here with his son. And Abraham Lincoln was being petitioned for many years, even presidents before Abraham Lincoln, by a woman named Sarah Josepha Hale, who was a very religious, devout woman who wanted to celebrate a time of Thanksgiving for inspired by the Pilgrims, but also as a way to unite the country. Now, Abraham Lincoln sort of gets behind this because the Civil War was raging in 1863. So in 1863, he announces that the United States or the Union is going to celebrate a period of Thanksgiving in November, the last week of November, as a way to be thankful for all of the victories that the Union was experiencing. But also the idea was that when the country was reunited, which she had always envisioned, that the country would then have a symbolic holiday to reunite the country itself after the Civil War. And the first, he had proclaimed this in 1863, but the first Thanksgiving actually wasn't really celebrated until Reconstruction during the 1870s after his death. But there is that story that Abraham Lincoln's son did not want him to kill the turkey for Thanksgiving dinner, so he did a presidential pardon on that turkey, which was done sort of as a show of kindness and fun for his son, and has been happening ever since. And there is Obama pardoning a turkey. Our current president does actually also pardon turkeys, but all jokes we'll save for another time. All right, so moving on. It is this president here who sort of federalizes the Thanksgiving that we know and love, and it's FDR. Now, FDR, actually on Halloween, October 31st, 1939, Franklin Delano Roosevelt signs a presidential proclamation that changes the holiday that Abraham Lincoln had started to the last Thursday in November for business reasons. Most likely those business reasons had to do with the start of the Christmas shopping season. And then on December 26, 1941, he signed a joint resolution of Congress changing Thanksgiving to the fourth Thursday in November. And you may recognize that date, December 26, 1941, is only a couple weeks after Pearl Harbor was bombed. So again, the holiday of Thanksgiving sort of comes as a salve for a very broken and divided country, or a country about to go into war. So Thanksgiving becomes this not only a holiday of thanks, but also a holiday of comfort, which I know this year in 2020, we could all use a little bit of. But before we do get into the parade, still a little bit of background. Here's a holiday that New Yorkers really don't know all that much about, but was a very big New York holiday. And actually, Nicole just told me she's doing an article on it tomorrow. And it's called Evacuation Day. And here is a painting of George Washington marching down Broadway. You may be able to guess the location of this painting, although a couple of things are wrong with it. One of which is you may see City Hall in the background, but City Hall didn't exist at that point. Right behind this crowd is the Common, which would be City Hall Park today. And to, well, it's my left, and your left too, you're looking at the same way. There's St. Paul's. But notice the American flag that they're carrying down Broadway. Way too many stars on that for that time, because Betsy Ross's only had 13. Anyway, Evacuation Day, actually at noon on November 25th in 1783, the English forces left New York for good after the Revolution to turn the city over to a new America. Now, the last scuffle between an Englishman and an American was actually between a innkeeper's wife who was booting a guy out, and she defiantly raised her own flag outside of her inn before the troops got there, and the English officer tried to get her to take it down, but she would not. And then Henry Knox himself, General Henry Knox, leads the troops into Broadway, getting it ready for George Washington to follow. The only problem is down at Fort George, which was Fort Amsterdam, which any of you have joined me for our Dutch New Amsterdam tour knows is now the footprint of the American, the Museum of the American Indian, or the Alexander Hamilton's Customs House. The Union Jack was left up on the pole in the fort, and the pole was greased so that the Americans could not take it down. But there was one man who would not be deterred, and his name was John Van Ardsdale. John Van Ardsdale was one of the initial troops that came in with Knox and who said, you know, don't worry about it, I got this. And he fashioned himself what could be described as sort of like wooden pegged clogs and some rope, and he climbed up the grease pole. He took down, as you see here, the Union Jack falling, and then they raised Betsy Ross's Stars and Stripes. And again, the first evacuation day, November 25th, 1783, would then be celebrated in some form on that day And it was about, I believe, it could be even 4 years ago now, that they finally decided to name the north portion or the north half of right outside of Bowling Green Park at the base of Manhattan, Evacuation Day Plaza, to celebrate this holiday. But before that, Evacuation Day was a school holiday for New York kids. This was almost as big as Thanksgiving was before Thanksgiving was federalized in the early 1940s. And you can see here was a plaque here put down commemorating John Van Ardsdale. It was said that a member of the Van Ardsdale family would come every Evacuation Day to ceremoniously raise the flag. Now, I tell this story on the Dutch New Amsterdam tour because the Van Ardsdales can trace their roots back to Dutch New Amsterdam. The Van Ardsdales were good old-fashioned Dutch New Yorkers. It was also said that the Van Ardsdales were involved in the Church of New Utrecht, or the New Utrecht Reformed Church, and there was also a flag erected at the New Utrecht Reformed Church on a liberty pole, and the successor of that pole still stands today. One more holiday. And this one was the most fascinating because I knew nothing about it until I think in 2016, I wrote 2 articles for Untapped about the parade, one about the first parade and the second about Secrets of the Balloons, both of which we'll cover today. But there was something called Ragamuffin Day, or the Ragamuffin Parade. And once Thanksgiving was a holiday and kids had Thanksgiving off, what they did was, this is before Halloween, so Halloween wasn't really sort of officially celebrated as we celebrated today until the 1940s. Kids would dress up like adults or try to do their best impersonations of adults, and they would take to the streets and they would knock on doors and say to the people at the door anything for Thanksgiving. And what they had baskets with them, and they were expecting people to give them fruit, bread, food, so that they could take it home for Thanksgiving. Now, you could imagine that the elites of New York absolutely hated this. They called them ragamuffins. As a matter of fact, the Ragamuffin Parade, I believe, was coined by one of the papers. I'm not sure if it was the Times or the Herald. And they actually started doing parades. And here is a picture, I think from the late 70s, of a Ragamuffin parade in Bay Ridge. So Bay Ridge still every once in a while holds a version of the Ragamuffin parade on Thanksgiving. What takes that over is the idea of dressing up on October 31st in costume, which becomes Halloween. And what phases Ragamuffin out? Well, it is the Thanksgiving Day Parade. And so we arrive at our destination. Now, the Thanksgiving Day Parade was not born in New York, like many things about New York. It's not born here, but it gets just really good here. So the Thanksgiving Day Parade was actually born at Gimbel's department store in Philadelphia in 1920. That was the first. Now, the background behind having parades on Thanksgiving came from the Eastern European immigrant workers who were coming to America in the 19-teens and 1920s, and who were thankful for being here and wanted to make themselves American by celebrating this uniquely American holiday. So a lot of these people worked in these large department stores like Gimbel's, like Bamberger's, and eventually like Macy's. So what do Europeans do when they're celebrating a holiday or a festival? They have a parade. So Gimbel's was the first to employ an employee-led parade in 1920. Then Louis Bamberger, who owned Bamberger's department store in Newark, New Jersey, and that's what you're looking at here. This is the old Bamberger's in Newark, started a similar parade not soon after. I believe it was 21 or 22, 19. And Macy's looked on this and said, we want to do it. And in 1924, Macy's will take the parade officially and have their first. And this is actually a float from the Newark Bamberger's parade, and that is Zappo the Clown float. And you could see the employees dressed up, mainly very fun, very bright, as clowns, which Macy's will do as well. And here it is, the picture of the first Macy's Day Christmas parade. So the Macy's parade starts out as a Christmas parade, as a very clever marketing tool. The idea for this parade was to get Santa Claus into New York and crown him King of the Kitties on a throne on the balcony of Macy's in Herald Square. The other reason to have this parade, besides the pride of the immigrants who were doing it, besides getting people shopping and celebrating Christmas with Santa Claus, was to also celebrate Macy's flagship store, which officially called itself the world's largest store because of a recent expansion that it underwent. Now, as you see here, there are elephants. The first parade did not have balloons. It did have floats, but the big attraction of the first Macy's Day Parade were actually animals. They borrowed the animals from the Central Park Zoo. And we're going to talk a little bit about the route of the original parade in a minute, but it was really long and the animals did not like it very much. But here is the first float. It's little Miss Moffat. And so the first parade was mainly dressed up clowns and characters, floats, and animals. No balloons yet. Balloons will come in about 4-ish years. We'll talk about that. This is sort of the precursor to the balloon. This is a balloon float from the first parade. And so when I did the articles back in 2016, one of the greatest resources, you may have heard me speak about it before, is the New York Times Times Machine. This thing is great because you can dial in a date, takes you to the New York Times of that day. So I go to the New York Times for the day of the parade. And what do I see? But R.H. Macy takes out this ad, and I clipped it from the Times. And this is obviously getting everybody to see Santa Claus, who's crowned King of the Kitties on the balcony, and to get everybody to visit Wondertown, the Macy's windows, but also the town that they have set up in and around Macy's for the kids. Get this, so see at the bottom it says, be sure to bring the kiddies, you'll enjoy it yourself too. So there was really no press about this parade. All of the press for the first Macy's parade actually came from Macy's itself, just taking ads out. And here you're going to see, this was an ad that they took out. Today is the day, read every word carefully. Big Christmas parade, welcome Santa Claus to New York. And again, that was the whole idea. The idea was we were going to bring Santa Claus and the Christmas season into New York, which it still is today, but we changed the focus a little bit more to Thanksgiving. Here's the original route. It was 7 miles long. The original route started at 145th Street and Convent Avenue. It made its way down to Manhattan Avenue, and then hitting 110th Street, it went south on Broadway to Columbus Circle. Then it continued to Broadway and down to 34th Street. So it was actually a little bit like 6 miles, which today's is about 2.5, starting in the 70s and ending at Herald Square. Now, imagine bringing elephants, monkeys, tigers, all of which who've lived in captivity most of their lives. They don't want to walk this far. This was a long walk. So the animals were getting grumpy. The tigers were getting slightly vicious. So they had decided, maybe we should can the animals next year. But what they decided not to can was the parade itself, because it was a huge success. Almost 200,000 people with little or no press coverage at all decided to come out and line the route of the parade. And as you'll see, this was the next day after Thanksgiving. This is what Macy's took out in the New York Times. We thank the people of New York and the adjacent communities for the overwhelming interest and festive enthusiasm, which helped to make yesterday's Christmas parade such a magnificent spectacle. We did not dare dream its success would be so great. And then you'll see in the middle, it says, such a parade will hereafter be an annual feature of Macy's Christmas program. We advise you now, make no other engagement for the morning of Thanksgiving Day, 1925. And they kept up good to their word. They would have a parade every year since, with the exception of 2 years during World War II. And they're, as we all know, doing it this year too in a different form. But the idea was, if we don't have animals, what are we going to do as sort of the central event to bring kiddies and families to the parade? And enter Tony Sarg. He was a Guatemalan born and then emigrated to Germany with his family. He trained as an illustrator, a cartoonist, a designer. He was also a puzzle creator. And most importantly, from what he's most known for, he was a puppeteer. And at the height of his popularity, he had so many accounts, from illustrating books to his puppetry, that he was making an $80,000 annual salary during the Great Depression. This was the type of money nobody else was making. And he even owned a restaurant called Bohemia, and he designed all of the plates and napkins himself. There were a couple of children's books, and he was commissioned by Macy's first to do their windows. So he had done the first animated windows ever in Macy's. And then he convinced Macy's that he could design balloons, balloon floats for the parade, and they took him up on it. One of the first balloons was Felix the cat, who was a famous silent film star. And this was actually a model of the Felix the cat balloon. It wasn't the actual one. This is the actual Felix the cat balloon, which made its debut in 1927 as the first Macy's Thanksgiving Day, or Christmas Day, it was still Christmas, by the way, parade float. Now, very successful run. As you can see, the employees who are managing the balloon are dressed up as clowns. That will happen for many years. Felix did great during the parade. The problem was what happened after the parade. So the balloons had no way of deflating naturally. So basically what they would do is they'd cut the balloons loose and they would just sort of float around. Felix unfortunately got caught in electric wires and caught fire. Poor Felix. So I guess because it was their first run with the balloons, they decided, maybe this is not a good way to do it. And they will have a slightly more elegant and fun solution for this for a while. But this was the second balloon, and I love this balloon. This was also in 1927, so this guy came right after Felix. He's called the Happy Dragon. And again, these are rubber, or basically like rubberized silk. They're helium filled. And this was one of the largest Tony Sarg balloons. It was 125 feet long, and it took over 50 handlers to manage it. But as you can see, he was low to the street. He was not a high flying balloon. And most of the early balloons that Sarg designed were low flying, not as high as we see the balloons today, or even what comes up in the 40s, the 30s and 40s. Speaking of which, the first, besides Felix, the first Disney balloon ever to launch was in 1934, and it's Mickey. And Mickey made a splash pretty early on, considering he made his animated debut in 1928 as Steamboat Willie. And here he is in 1934 making his Macy's parade debut. And Sarg actually helped the Disney company design this. He still designed the balloons at this time. A little bit more to say about Tony Sarg, because he really was a very interesting character. And I say an interesting, pivotal New Yorker to the mid-20th century because of what he gives us in the parade, but he barely gets recognized. There's a little plaque outside of Macy's at Herald Square on a street post to him, but that's about it. We don't talk much about Tony other than that. And you can see Tony's style is very unique. It's very European, and even his balloons look like marionettes, which he was most famous for. And actually, Pete Tannen, who I know is with us today, said that his aunt and uncle actually worked indirectly, maybe directly, with marionettes that Sarg had helped to start, or a marionette company, which Pete, you can enlighten us on a little later. But even his balloons, fanciful, almost like they're right out of the pages of storybooks. And you can see here they are working, that's him in the coat at the bottom on another human balloon. I don't remember which one this is, but here's an elephant, which was a Tony Sarg balloon. And for years, they would take out advertisements before the Thanksgiving parade, and they would tell the kids what the balloons were going to be. And they would wait for this. This was a huge event. What's the new Tony Sarg balloon going to be? Here's an elephant. Now, unfortunately, Tony Sarg would not last too much longer as the main balloon designer at Macy's. Here's a really interesting, I love this dragon, really sort of neat multi-piece balloon. A friendly-ish dragon, but not as friendly as the other dragon. His financial success would actually take a really nasty downturn in 1939. He would file for bankruptcy after making all of that money off of shows, this restaurant Bohemia. He just didn't manage his money well, and the Depression was still raging on. And in 1942, he's going to die at the age of 61 from a ruptured appendix, which was a shame because he was really at the height of his creative expression. And of course, the Macy's balloons really sort of catapulted him to fame. Now, of course, you didn't think you were going to show up to a presentation without some video. So here is a video of the 1928 parade. This is a thing is almost like a 5-minute video. I'm going to show about the first minute of it, just so you can get the ambient feel and look of what's coming down the street. And then when this is done and the video's cut, I'll send you all the video links like I normally do.
What you doing, Doc Close?
All right. I love that video because you could hear all sort of like the tough guys on the street, like yelling at one another. It's a really good slice of 1928 life, especially down on the street with the parade. And you could see how most of those balloons were mainly floats, but they were not, again, high floating balloons. So this dachshund, I love dachshunds, period, but I just love this balloon. But as I had mentioned before, Felix the cat was not released successfully. He burns. That's dangerous. They don't want that to happen again. So Tony designs a valve system, and you might be able to see on the feet of the dachshund these little valves sticking out. And so what they would do is at the end of the parade, they'd open the valves and let the balloons go into the sky, knowing that the balloons would deflate eventually, and this could take days, and then they would land wherever they would land. Now, sewn into the balloons was a patch that said, please return to Macy's with the Herald Square address. And it said, if returned, you will get a $100 gift certificate to Macy's. So people actually really wanted to find these deflated balloons and mailed them back because they wanted the gift certificate. As a matter of fact, there was an alleged report that 2 tugboats ripped a balloon apart in the East River because there was a deflated balloon floating in the East River. They raced, as only tugboats can, to it, and then ripped it apart trying to claim it to get that $100 gift certificate for Macy's. Only in New York is what I like to say about that. And here is a picture of a Tony Sark pig, which obviously you can see that very long vent at the bottom of the pig that they would let go. And what do you see behind it but the newly minted, because I believe this picture is from 1932, the newly minted Empire State Building, just built. The fun is going to end, though, after 1933, because something happens that could have been a lot more unfortunate than it was. And I believe we'll talk about that a little bit later when we get to a couple of the balloon mishaps that I'm going to talk about. But moving along to 1934, the only real human being to ever be presented in balloon form at the Macy's parade was Eddie Cantor. And this is 1934, and some of you may know the entertainer and singer Eddie Cantor from Yes, We Have No Bananas, and Merrily We Roll Along. My grandfather loved Eddie Cantor. My favorite story about Eddie Cantor is he was a waiter at Feltman's down in Coney Island, and any of you have seen my Coney Island talk or the Coney Island tour in person know that Nathan Handwerker of Famous Nathan's, or Nathan's Famous, sorry, worked there as well. And he was good friends with Eddie Cantor. And Eddie Cantor was one of the people who convinced Nathan to start selling his wife Ida's hot dog recipe. And of course, the rest is history. So we have Eddie Cantor to thank for that as well. As you can see, Eddie Cantor looks, I don't know, creepy, weird, a little bit cracked out, maybe. and it didn't work very well. Kids were actually scared of it. So they did not redo a actual human. Balloons basically would be contained to cartoons, animals, and superheroes and fun images. But humans, real humans, just don't translate. Don't know if you could consider Ronald McDonald one. One of my favorite floats is next. I love the Happy Hippo. And they redid the Happy Hippo a couple of years ago in homage, I believe, for the 90th anniversary. And I couldn't find a picture of it, but thanks to Klaus, we have one, which we'll see later. And here is the Happy Hippo in 1940 making its way through Times Square. And as you can see, the balloons now, they're getting a little higher. They're not gigantic, but they're getting a little higher than the ones that stay closer to the street. This next one, Uncle Sam, also 1940, so probably right after the Happy Hippo. I just figured we could all use a little Uncle Sam right now. So it's a really neat balloon too, very long. And then the biggest star of the 1940 parade was Superman. And this will be the first of 3 famous Superman balloons. And again, this is another video file. It's colorized. It's actually really good quality. And one of the things I'd like you to look at, besides the Superman coming around the bend, it's taken from an apartment window, or it could be office window, but where I think it's located off the park, I'm pretty sure it's probably an apartment. I want you to look at what's going on the street level. The Thanksgiving parade in 1940 is not a lot like the parade that we know today. It's a lot less commercialized. It's a lot less glitzy. It's a lot of fun. And it looks like a small town parade on the ground until Superman comes. And then you realize it's something completely different. I don't understand the music, sorry. Not very 1940. We just saw him. There he comes. I really like that video. I like that video because you really do feel like you are at, with the exception of the very quick cuts, which get a little dizzying after a few minutes. You really sense how these balloons are really larger than life. And in 1940, I mean, absolutely amazing. Now, this next guy, so Tony Sarg is no longer with us. Macy's is not using him anymore. But Macy's is now still introducing new balloons because they're such a hit. But what I love, and I put this in the secrets of the Macy's balloons post I did in 2016, that some of the Macy's balloons had personality disorders because they would show up as different people every multiple years. So this is 1945, and this is the introduction of one of the 5 fat men balloons, as they called them. This is Bobo the Hobo. But then next year, Bobo the Hobo is going to show up as Harold the baseball player in 1946. And then he shows up in 1947 as Harold the police officer, which I do not have a picture of. And then in 1948, he's going to show up as Harold the fireman. So Harold keeps changing jobs. Well, first of all, he doesn't have a job. Then secondly, he gets a job, and then he has another job. So good for Harold. But it's the same balloon that gets redesigned and repurposed every year. And actually, Harold the fireman was reimagined and brought back to the parade in 2011. And Harold still shows up. I don't know if he's on the docket for this year or not. I did look at the docket, but I don't remember if I saw his name. I believe they also have a Harold the policeman as a separate balloon as well. Love that. And then, of course, the elf, the Macy's elf, also a very popular symbol of now what we call Santaland at Macy's, was introduced in 1947 to the parade. And that's a picture of this from 1947 coming down 34th Street. And they have redone these balloons as well. There are now 3 elves that they present in the parade. And these are a different class of balloon, which we'll talk about in a little bit. There are 4 or 5 classes of balloons now. And then remember that dachshund that I showed you a little before from the 30s getting released? Well, this is the 1953 version of that dachshund. And again, I just included it because I love the dachshund. I also love that Kleenex ad behind it above Schraff's. Just a great ad. You could blow your head off. And then we get into the 60s. And of course, here's Bullwinkle, debuted in 1961 of Rocky End. And next we're gonna go to one of my faves because I'm a big Peanuts fan. Here's Snoopy. And again, this was the cover slide we used. As Snoopy appeared in 1968 as the World War I flying ace. He did not have his doghouse though. And Snoopy has had many iterations since the beginning of the parade. He will show up over 30 times in some form. Not the same balloon, but Snoopy shows up in multiple scenarios in multiple parades from 1968 on. And actually, a year later, 1969, they do an astronaut Snoopy to commemorate the Apollo 11 moon landing. And I believe last year or the year before, they relaunched a Snoopy astronaut balloon, which we have a picture of. I think it's one of Robin's.
Yeah,
But
it was last year.
It was last year. Thank you, Nicole. Nothing could compare, and this is one of my first memories of the parade, to the largest balloon ever put in a Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, and this is from 1980. It is Superman. This is the 3rd Superman balloon. The first one we saw in 1940. The second one I do not have a picture of. I believe it was 1966. And then in 1980, we get the Man of Steel again. And this is going to be the largest balloon, most likely ever, and never again. They will not do a balloon as large as Superman because of safety restrictions. It had its arms stretched like it was flying, obviously, and the cape flying behind him. It was 104 feet in length, 35 feet wide. It weighed 550 pounds and required 12,000 cubic feet of helium so that he could fly like that. And actually, you see him sort of lumbering his way down Broadway there. And this was the memory I actually have of, I was probably, I guess I had just turned 3. So it's like a real and I probably have a memory of it later because he came in the parade a couple of years later, up until about 86 or 87, I believe. And this is also going to be the last balloon to be made by Goodyear Tire Company. So Tony Sarg in the 1920s entered into a contract with Goodyear to provide the rubber for the balloons. And the last account was Superman in 1980. From then on, Macy's went into the balloon making business themselves. They set themselves up in a awesome balloon studio, which we'll see a little bit in a minute, out in Moonachie, New Jersey. I do have, I believe, again, I remember this is from 1984, and I have a memory of this. So I think this is what I am thinking of. 1984 would have made me, yeah, five or six. So this is just a very brief showing of Superman. Now notice, the footage that we've seen from 28 and 40 look far better than the footage we're going to see from 1984.
Henderson and Mary Lou Retton filled in. I took my son downstairs to break a break, take a break with me. He's only 5 years old. His primary concern was not taking the break, but getting back upstairs in time to see Superman. He is clearly the favorite of all the youngsters in the parade. The man of steel that's with 2 E's being handled by 50 youngsters on the ground this morning.
Superman in 1985 will actually, I believe, hit a light pole, and he will be damaged, but they will put him back together, I believe, for one more run, possibly 2 more runs in 86 or 87. But he just got too unwieldy, and because of safety restrictions, they will not make a balloon. I think I mentioned this, but they won't make a balloon that big. But he certainly was a giant. Now this is Clifford. Clifford makes his debut, The Big Red Dog, in 1990. Also a personal connection to this. I was good friends with the author of Clifford, Norman Bridwell. A lot of you know that I had spent my summers on Martha's Vineyard working in a toy store. Now, Norman Bridwell lived in Edgartown, Massachusetts, when he wasn't in Boston. And so because of that association, my toy store that I worked at for many years covered everything Clifford, especially Clifford when it was picked up by Scholastic. There'd not only be the books, there'd be all this Clifford merch. And Norman, who was the sweetest, most charming, nicest guy in the world, would sneak into the toy store in the middle of the summer at like 4 p.m. and go, "Justin, is there any new Clifford merchandise?" He just couldn't believe it. He would just see, like, pencil cases and sharpeners and all this stuff with Clifford. And I remember I said to Norman, "Norman, what do you think about having a float in the parade?" And he goes, it's beyond my wildest dreams. Clifford, really sweet. And of course the stories are really sweet as well. I believe Norman, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, passed away. Really, really sweet man. And a great balloon too. Kids still love Clifford. But of course, back to Snoopy. So again, Snoopy holds the title of being the most featured balloon in the parade's history. As I said, 68 was Aviator Snoopy. 69 was Astronaut Snoopy. Then we had an ice skating Snoopy in 87. We had a winter Snoopy with Woodstock in 88. We had a Millennium Snoopy in 99. Then a 75th anniversary parade Snoopy in 2001. Flying A Snoopy in 2006. The list goes on. Snoopy with Woodstock, I believe, was 2013. And then we had a Snoopy astronaut, as we know. So Snoopy has made more appearances than any other character. And of course, he's just the cutest thing in the world. Who doesn't love Snoopy? And I love this picture. There's Snoopy astronaut from last year. Really great balloon. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the classes before we talk about some of the memories that some of the insiders submitted to us. So this is a novelty class balloon. It is the oldest class of balloon in the Macy's parade. And usually the novelty classes are smaller, they're lower to the ground, and they require 1 to about 30 at the biggest novelty class handler. This is the Macy's Red Star. So fascinating, I don't know if anybody knows this, but don't know if anybody knows where the red Macy's star comes from. But R.H. Macy, the founder of R.H. Macy, he founded Macy's in 1943, but he was from Nantucket. And he was 21 years old when he founded Macy's. And his full name is Roland Husey Macy. That's why we call him R.H. And at 15, he worked on a whaling ship, because when in Rome or when in Nantucket, what do? You work on a whaling ship. And sailors notoriously had tattoos tattooed on them for luck or good fortune. And he thought that a red star tattooed on his hand would bring him good luck and fortune. And boy, was he right. So the red star tattooed on Macy's hand becomes the red star of Macy's that we see to this day, all over Macy's branding still. And here is a novelty class Macy's balloon. But they have different stars, different colors. They have blue stars, they have yellow stars, they have the Believe stars. There's a lot of Macy's novelty class star balloons. The elves are the novelty class balloons as well, the little elves that I showed you. The next is the newest. This was launched in 2005, and it is the Blue Star class. The Blue Star class of balloon was conceptualized to bring modern art to balloon form to the parade. And this is Jeff Koons' Rabbit, which was introduced into the parade in 2005. The first, and I don't have a picture of it, but the 2005 introduction to the Blue Star class was actually a Tom Otterness. It was a Humpty Dumpty, I believe, done by Tom Otterness, who a lot of you know who've taken the Subway Art Tour with me or saw the virtual. He is the guy who does the little bronze statues at 14th and 8th Avenue. And then we have a Keith Haring figure with heart, which I believe was 2013. And again, this is part of the Blue Star. As you can see by the size of it, it would also be subcategorized as a Blue Star novelty because it's not that large. Some of them have been large. As a matter of fact, the next guy, these are Tashaki Murakami's KK and Kiki from 2010. And these are fairly decent sized balloons. There was one last year. And I do not believe they're going to be introducing a Blue Star. They haven't done them every year since 2005. They've taken a couple of years off. I do not have a picture of the one last year. But this is a balloon, this is a falloon, all right? So this is one of the smaller categories or classes, and it is a combination of a float and a balloon, or a float-based balloon. And these were introduced officially into the parade in 1977, and the first falloon was the Big Apple falloon. This is the latest iteration of the Big Apple. There's been 3. I think they've updated it 3 times since 1977. But there it is. I love the subway signs, or the mosaics on the bottom wrapping around. It's very New York. And the Daily News. And then we have the balloonsicle, or the balloonicle. I always call it a balloonsicle. But a balloonicle is a combination of a balloon on a vehicle, usually a bike or some kind of motorized bike or truck. And I am almost pretty positive that this year's parade is going to be exclusively driven around by vehicles, and there will probably be a couple of balloonicles as well. By the way, what I didn't talk about was the largest, the one like Superman, and the ones that we have been talking about most of this talk are novelty class balloons. That's the class, the big guys. So you've got novelty, balloonicle, you've got the Blue Star class, and then the falloons. We're going to talk about a couple of mishaps through history. So this is Tomcat from 1932. And Tomcat was released into the air with the valves like Tony Sarg had wanted it to. And it floats its way over to Brooklyn. And there is a flight student by the name of Annette Gibson who is with her instructor. She sees the balloon and she basically decides, she's a bit of a daredevil. She says, end quote, I think I'll have a piece of its neck. And she flies the plane right into the balloon, thinking that that was a good idea. Probably it wasn't a good idea. And after making contact, the balloon actually wound itself into the propeller of, I believe it was the left side. And Gibson, smartly enough, actually turns the plane off so that the engine does not catch fire, but they do start spinning out of control. Gibson's husband and family are actually watching this all take place, horrified, on the ground. And actually, because she gets thrown out of her seat and almost thrown out of the plane completely. She gets the door open, she falls out, she actually catches onto the plane. Sounds like a movie. She wrenches herself back in, but at that time, her instructor actually takes the controls and rights the plane, gets it flying again, and they both land safely back at Floyd Bennett Field in Brooklyn. And after that little stunt, the safety measures the city puts in place says, never again will you let a balloon float. Can't do it. And actually, they get in trouble. They get fined for doing stunt flying over a densely populated area. But Annette Gibson will go on to be a fairly famous pilot herself. She'll make the headlines as a certified pilot later. The first video game character, or the first video game whatever to be a balloon, I guess character is good, was Sonic the Hedgehog in 1993. And he did not have a good time at the parade. It was a very windy year in 1993. I don't know if anybody remembers it. And two balloons, Sonic and a T-Rex, lose themselves.
Annual Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade today. Winds gusting up to 20 miles an hour battered some of the parade's giant balloons. Poor Rex the dinosaur was blown into a light pole and he popped open. And later a gust of wind blew Sonic the Hedgehog into another light pole. That guy sprung a leak and fell to the street, knocked over a lamppost. A child and a police officer were hit, slightly injured, but they're okay tonight.
So one of the biggest problems about balloons and wind and being out of control is the fact that the safety of the crowd on the ground. There was a report, one balloon, it wasn't this one, but one balloon hit a street lamp and something had fallen and actually hit a girl, two sisters, in the back of the head, and they needed stitches, and it was fairly serious. This is not something to joke around about. So each year it seems like the safety measures get stronger and stronger, and the tolerance for putting these balloons out into the wind grows higher or lower and lower. So one of the problems is once the balloons get to Columbus Circle, it flattens out because of the park and because of the circle, and that is a really rough area for the balloon handlers to handle the balloons. Sorry, I'm losing my capability to speak. So this is Robin Rothmois, who's been sort of my, as I said, you're my insider photographer on the beat, has sent me a couple of really good photographs, which we will see, not only memories, but what's going on currently. And this plaque was installed at the corner of 77th and Columbus to commemorate the start of the parade. And this is where the parade starts. It's also near the area where they do the inflating, which has become quite a event within itself. Used to be a low-key event. Actually, Nicole is going to speak a little bit about it because she was there last year. But I do have, this was a Macy's video that went out about them packing the balloons. And this is a tour inside of their Moonaki studio where they not only design the balloons, they make the balloons and they test the balloons. Now, normally they will test the balloons with hot air, not helium, in the parking lot. And here we go. It's a fun little look. The perspective is wide angled, so it's a little weird.
This area has all of our paints and glitter. We have glitter in every color of the rainbow, and we have even more colors than that in paint. Look at all of those colors that are on the shelves, and all sorted out for various floats and various balloons so that our artists know which ones get to be used where. Now, the backside of our paint studio leads to the other half of what we do for the parade. We do a lot of floats, but we also do, whoa, more confetti. These clowns, I tell you, they just never stop. We also work on inflatables. There are two kinds of inflatables. Our star is a cold air inflatable. Now, what that means is there's a fan blowing just regular air into it, but you can see where it's been stitched together with our giant sewing machine. This balloon has more than 1 million holes in it. On these
sorry about that.
These racks that you see to your left are all of the giant balloons that have already been made ready for the parade. And each one of those has to be completely sealed. So we use adhesives and heat sealing so that none of those balloons will leak at all. We test them, including our hippo here. We fill it with some air to make sure that it's going to hold everything. And we love, as I said before, animals. We're all about hippopotamus and our wiggle worm that's got all the beautiful colors of the rainbow. And this balloon is actually made of 12 separate balloons joined together. Remember I said we start with Thanksgiving, and we have our great turkey float, and we have the pumpkin balloons. Well, at the end of the parade, I think you know what comes. It's all about that guy in the red suit. We have his sleigh, and we have a candy cane balloon that'll be flying with him. So we start with Thanksgiving, and we bring it all the way through to Santa. And in between is a whole lot of fun with a whole lot of characters. Hey, everybody, come on out and meet Jack. He's come to the studio to see how we do the parade. How about we show him how we always start the parade? Everybody uptown gets together, all the excitement is there, and we all count. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's have a parade! Happy Thanksgiving, Jack.
That was pretty cool. Jack was I think he was like a 12 or 13-year-old. He was manning the camera. I thought that was nice. And there were 4 parts to that program. Now, Nicole, this is yours, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. So Nicole last year, as a lot of, I know you insiders, because you were talking about it, have been to the inflation event, which is the evening before, which generally starts at around 3 o'clock and lasts till about 10 p.m. Right by the Museum of Natural History. But what they have to do is to get those balloons from Moonachie, New Jersey, they got to bring them through the Lincoln Tunnel. And to get them through the Lincoln Tunnel, they have to be folded and put into these crates and boxes that can only be 12.5 feet by 8.5 feet long to get through the toll booth. So Nicole, what I have here, if you want to speak to it, is this picture, which is the Grinch folded up. I also have, you took a picture of the inflation instructions for the Power Ranger, which I think is cool. And I think you said that you had heard some guys, the captain instructed them about the chambers. And then I'm not sure, and this is Michelle's. So this is, so you can just tell us what you learned from last year's trip to the inflation.
Sure. So yeah, it was really cool because you get to see the balloons at every stage, from where you see it folded up here in the cart to when they take it out and kind of lay it flat. And then when they start inflating it piece by piece. I ran into actually one of the balloon technicians last year, and he had a 3D model of last year's art balloon was it was a Kusama balloon.
Oh, the Kusama balloon. Right. That was the blue sky, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like a sun type balloon, and he had a little 3D model of that. And the balloons, most of the balloons have different chambers. The different pieces are blown up individually, and that was cool to see the model and then see the balloon like get blown up right in front of me.
There's the wimpy kid getting blown up, and these are Robin's, I believe. Robin sent me some inflation photos as well. And as you see, they obviously keep them tied down by the nets as they are inflating them. So
yeah, and they have a line of They toss the sandbags to each other and then lay them all out.
And how long did it take generally? They say it takes about, for the smaller balloons, it only takes, like for the novelty ones, the larger ones can take up to about 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure how much time, but I was like kept doing laps around the 2 blocks that they have them on, and like piece by piece, I would see the balloons get blown up throughout the day.
The smaller balloons can take only about 20, 25 to a half hour. They go pretty quickly, but the other ones. The other thing which is really interesting is all of these balloons have they have captains, they have pilots, co-pilots, they have assistant captains, and then of course people who control the balloon during the parade itself. So there is a staff, and the larger balloons sometimes take up to 90 people to control them, which is one of the reasons why this year it's not going to be people driven because of social distancing. There is the Power Ranger being inflated, right? That is the Power Ranger. And then here's another wimpy kid. Wimpy kid's taking more shape. I have been to this event twice. It has become quite a scene, but as I've talked to others, Robin had said when she was a kid, it really was the best kept secret of New York. Her father, Richard, told me that when the parade started up at 110th Street, that that he would go as well and see it. And of course, it was something that sort of the local kids knew about, but not everybody. And now everybody goes when they're doing it. Right now, I do not know where I think they're keeping that location pretty under wraps about where the inflation's taking place. So.
Yeah, they aren't letting photographers or anything.
And they're not letting anybody in. Again, Robin, photographer on the scene, has sent us some late editions that came literally 45 minutes before we did the presentation of what Herald Square looks like, which we'll see in a couple of shots. But again, here you can see the inflation event happening. There's Snoopy going up as the astronaut. And this is literally this morning. So Robin was down walking around Herald Square, and she caught, these are all floats, nothing balloons that I can see, but these are the floats being staged for what is going to be the virtual or taped parade. So my understanding about this year's parade is obviously no parade goers. They do not want people getting together in crowds, obviously lining a parade route. So they've kept the parade route pretty much under wraps. They're also doing it in sort of filmed stages. They're doing events filmed at different times. So this is a Mount Rushmore float. There is the Green Giant with the Empire State Building behind him. And the cooling tower for the LIRR by Penn Station, in case anybody's, now that's my parade. There is the Macy Star. They are doing, I believe, 4 Broadway shows will be represented this year. I think that was the count. And select acts, no bands, no marching bands. All of the marching bands I read were deferred to the 2021 parade. Because when I was a marching band kid myself in high school, you know, that's the dream. You get into the parade. And so it's a big honor. And you could imagine how many marching bands must have been super disappointed about not being able to join in. But they said, don't worry, you'll have a spot in 2021. And I wonder who's going to sit in that car. Red shoe. That'll be a Ronald McDonald. And then here is 34th. As you can see, again, everything sort of staged up. Robin also corroborated that security is very, very tight down here today. And these are literally from this morning. So thank you, Robin. And here are some Macy's workers just not letting anybody in. Herald Square. I like those jackets. Good job, Macy's. Now, switching over, I did ask if any insiders had any photographic memories that they wanted to share of the parade. So we're going to go seamlessly into Robin's 1980, she believes this is 86, and here is Kermit rounding the corner near the Dakota. love Kermit. He was also a big fan. I was a big fan of his during my childhood, so this would have been huge for me. And there is another shot of Kermit coming around the bend. That is Robin's daughter on her husband's shoulders, and there is Superman flying away behind them. Robin said you could see she lost interest after Superman passed by, because after Superman, really, what's the point? And then I love this photo. This is Robin's grandson and son-in-law at the inflation event. Was it last year, Robin, or the year before? And they weren't even supposed to be there. They all had decided to stay down in New York last minute. They were going to have Thanksgiving outside of New York, but they stayed, I believe, because her daughter was pregnant, and they got on the news. So I like that juxtaposition between her husband and daughter, and then grandson and son-in-law. And these are from Klaus. And Klaus, thank you you've sent pictures of a couple things I was looking for, one of which is Tom Turkey. And I said I wasn't going to talk about floats. I was going to talk about balloons, but you can't not talk about the parade without Tom Turkey. Tom Turkey begins the parade. So the idea is the parade starts with Tom and ends with Santa. So starts with Thanksgiving and ends with Christmas. A festive turkey hat. I love that hat. I don't know what's going on in this float. I've been trying to figure it out. I believe, Klaus, you said this was from 2015. And 2015 was one of the only parades I didn't see because I was doing the show. The Eternal Space was up in the theaters, and we were dark that day, but I was so exhausted. I slept through the parade on Thanksgiving Day. It was my only day off because we had a show the next day. So I missed this parade totally. If you want to enlighten me, this looks like a patriotic float of some kind with a sailor. And I don't know who the chick is. I also don't know who that player is, but obviously that is a baseball player in a baseball float. A musical act. There's also, Klaus, you make it look like this is out in upstate New York somewhere. I love these pictures. We're so used to seeing all of the floats against buildings, and you've got them all against the trees of the park. It's great. And thank you, Klaus, the modern Happy Hippo. As you remember, the Happy Hippo from 1940, this was a new take on the Happy Hippo. And Snoopy in Woodstock, which again, this balloon was introduced into the parade in 2013. And the whole point of the parade is to get Santa to Macy's. And of course, one of the films which made the parade famous was Miracle on 34th Street, because it's featured only for a minute as Santa coming into New York. And let's see that. Hold on a minute. Sorry, I'm having a technical difficulty here. All right. $1947. And there's Santa. There will be no Santa stationed at Macy's in person, although there will be Santa in the parade. Santa will be a part of the parade tomorrow. I'm sorry, Thursday. But
scared me there, Justin.
Sorry, yeah, I'm sorry. I said that really wrong. Santa will not be seeing children in person at Macy's this year, which is the first time, I believe, since the 1860s that is not occurring. But you can get virtual appointments to meet Santa virtually at Macy's if you want to. So I'm curious to see how that will go, but there is Santa. And so I'll just wrap all of this up with saying one of the reasons why I wanted to do this is, well, who doesn't love to talk about the parade, but also to share gratitude for all of you guys who have made a very rough year really special. So thank you very much. And I don't know why I'm getting all woozy, but thank you for joining us throughout these virtual events. We're very grateful for you. And now I will take any questions or memories or anything people would like to contribute at this time. I know it's 1:09, but you knew that was going to happen, right? Nicole, anything good come through during? I see 16.
Yeah, so Robin mentioned that she was at the parade. I think the one that Sonic had some issues at, and she said there was also olive oil caught her arm on a lamppost at 72nd and Central Park West. And
yeah, that was a
climbed up the post to release her hand.
Oh, wow.
To release her hand.
Yeah, that was a really bad, windy Thanksgiving. 93. I'm trying to think of where I believe I was at 94 in person. I mainly watched the parade on television because it was such a better seat. But I went twice, and I believe 94 was the first time.
Yeah, and also Robin says she remembers walking down to her school and watching from the first grade classroom windows.
Oh, neat. Oh, I see Robert Morbeck said was about to complain Miracle was not mentioned. Nah, I saved it up for last, Robert. It is, Miracle on 34th Street is credited with really sort of giving national, almost global fame to the parade because of that scene. Thank you, Robert.
Santa's my favorite part of the parade.
Yeah, of course. I mean, as a kid, that was it. Like, basically, I knew once Santa came through, I had to be really freaking good. Like, I mean, I had to be good. Like, he's here, he's in New York, he's close by. Klaus, yes, happy Thanksgiving to all. Gary, you know, I knew somebody was going to ask this question, and I cannot find a definitive answer. I'm still working on it. The question is, when did the parade get renamed for Thanksgiving and why? Now, when I had done the articles in 2016, I thought I had the answer. And then I went back to my notes and I didn't see it. And I've been searching. If anybody knows the exact date, let me know. So it is because, and I was like, I know somebody's going to ask when they switch it over from Christmas to Thanksgiving. And I will get, I'll get on it and I will try to find the answer by time I send the video out to you guys to see if we can get it. I'm catching up here. Elliot, my pleasure. Justin, by the way, my Jewish family would celebrate Thanksgiving in New Jersey by going to a Chinese restaurant because they thought it was a Christian religious holiday. So we had a protest dinner. We did go to the parade though. I love that, Elliot. That's great. Rich says, my favorite picture of my daughter Miranda and I from when she's younger is from her on my shoulders walking. The picture is a screenshot on my cell phone, and whenever I see someone walking like that, I go up to them, show them the picture, and let them know they have to take a lot of pictures. Yeah, that's true. That's why I loved Robin's photos too. Those on the shoulder photos are just great. There's one of me and my dad from like 82. It's a great one. Robin says, I never knew that there was a whole event going on in front of Macy's from 9 to 10 because I would miss it all being at the parade. Oh, right. Yeah. Very, very true. And also, Rich, you sent that photo of you with the Grinch hat on, but I didn't want to use it because I asked, but you didn't tell me if I could. So I didn't put it in, but Rich sent a really great photo of him at the inflation event with a Grinch hat because apparently Rich says from Thanksgiving to Christmas, he wears this really neat Grinch cap or like woolen hat. Oh, okay. I wonder if I could call it up. Marcy says, in 1964, I was a dancer who was chosen to participate in a big dance number of New York, New York. It was a combination of a lot of kids from regional dance schools. Unfortunately, we got there about 6 a.m. and I had the flu with a high fever. Oh no, Marcy, I couldn't dance. My parents took me to family friend's apartment with a view of the parade, and I sort of watched it through the window. Aw, sorry, Marcy. Our band, the Lakeland Regional High School Band from Northern New Jersey, was a finalist for the parade, and we did not get in. We were so bummed out. We thought for sure we were going to be in the Thanksgiving Day parade. And, you know, that's it. When you're a high school band, you just want to be in the parade. And we did not get it. We were really disappointed. Let me see if I can call up that picture of Rich. I don't know. How would I do this? Let me stop my share. Oh, and he's wearing his Grinch hat now. It was in my email. And if anybody else has a memory or anything that they would like to share, please do. And if not, let me see if I can get this photo quickly before I bid you all adieu and a very, very good Thanksgiving. Actually, you know what, Rich? It might be easier if I just include it with the email, because I think I'm gonna have to download it and then post it to the chat. So why don't we just do that instead? So like I said, as I got squishy-eyed at the end of this thing, I want to thank you all very much for joining me today, joining me for this talk. Thank you, Nicole, for being my co-host. And I sort of envision that next year we'll probably do floats. I talked about balloons, so why not? We'll be doing virtual, pandemic or not. And next year we'll focus on floats, and there will be something holiday themed coming down the pike. I haven't decided yet if it's going to be tree related or if it's going to be night before Christmas related with Thomas Nast in December. But Joe, happy Thanksgiving as well. I hope your American Thanksgiving goes well. I know your daughter's boyfriend from America is out in London. Robin, wishing you and your family a very happy and safe Thanksgiving, and to you as well. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Enjoy. I know it's going to be a little different this year, but still very grateful for our health and everything. So have a very good day, and I will see you next week. Our next event after Thanksgiving, I believe, Nicole, is it Williamsburg or is it the dance? I didn't even look. I'm not as organized as I usually am today.
Yeah, there's a couple. I believe the dance one is first. So yeah, we have listening to Immigrant New York with the Center for Traditional Music and Dance on Wednesday the 2nd. And then on the 3rd is the Grit to Hip Williamsburg tour.
Oh, that's me.
And then you mentioned holiday events. The next Tuesday, we have the Christmas Time Animal Tales of John.
Oh, from Peggy. Yeah, Peggy's back. So yeah, the week after Thanksgiving, it's going to be good. We're really happy about this partnership that we have with the Center for Traditional Music and Dance. We're going to be bringing all of their virtual events, their virtual musical dance and performance events to you through Insiders, but they're going to do a presentation for us teeing that up. It's going to be great. And then I'm going to do Williamsburg, a virtual version of my Williamsburg tour, mainly because Pfizer has been in the news. And yeah, then we'll start doing some Christmas stuff with Peggy. We have a very full December coming. So thank you guys very much. Oh, Rich, that's an excellent idea. Yeah, you know what? Let me figure out, maybe we can do a virtual stabilizer event down at the Diker Lights. That would be fun. I'm assuming they're doing the Diker Lights this year.
And Justin, just Mel mentioned in the Q&A section, I don't know if you can see that, to include your article about the parade.
Yes, I will. I'll do both of them. I'll do the first Thanksgiving Day parade and the Secrets of the Balloons. All right. Have a good one. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of your week and holiday. Stay safe. Bye.